For more on the fallout from these major Supreme Court decisions, let's bring in our political panel. Joining us today is Garrett Ventry, the founder of GRV Strategies, and Mottur, a partner at Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here on this holiday weekend. We appreciate it. We're going to begin by pulling up some polling. Fox News has done some polling. This one obviously done prior to these decisions coming down. This is where Fox News asked registered voters if they have or lack confidence in the Supreme Court. Now, you can see since 2017, we see a drop of 35% of people who have confidence in the court and lacking at 52%. Garrett, if you look at the timeline there, 2017 to 2023, that's a conservative court at work. Does this concern you?
I mean, I think there's a couple reasons why. I think a few reasons. Number one is I think there's a basic misunderstanding of the role of the Supreme Court and what they do. I think a lot of folks think they're a political body who should do what politics or popularity wants. They're not. It's nine justices, who are supposed to follow the law and follow the facts and do what is right and do what the law requires, even if it's not popular or the politically motivated decision of the time. I think the second part is there's usually a media frenzy of these 6-3 cases. What's not mentioned is the vast majority of these cases are 9-0 or this term. Another very interesting factoid is that they have been 7-2, where a liberal justice has joined the conservative bloc. So that doesn't get talked about enough. Now, obviously, these blockbuster cases, when it's abortion, religious liberty, affirmative action, are going to garner a lot of attention. And those are going to be high stakes blockbuster cases. I understand that. I do think specifically on these two cases, when you're looking at affirmative action, for example, on the Harvard and UNC admissions case, all the Supreme Court was saying is we don't want racial discrimination anymore. What you saw was you had one racial group had a lower standard to get in, and another racial group, specifically Asian Americans, had a higher standard based on their race. I think that's wrong, and the Supreme Court was right to step in. On the student loan forgiveness one, this is the last thing I'll say, you saw Chief Justice Roberts quote Nancy Pelosi saying that Joe Biden did not have this authority. And so if Joe Biden wants to go ahead and do this, he's going to have to go with a legislative solution, not just by executive fiat.
Al, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, thanks. Look, the reason the court has lost trust is because they actually are making more political decisions. The decision on Dobbs last year, the decision just yesterday on a public accommodation and whether or not someone can claim belief against gay marriage or gay partners and therefore not provide public services, both of those decisions reverse prior precedent. Go back to 1968, people said, well, I don't want to serve a black man and a white woman coming into my restaurant. That was unconstitutional in a public accommodation. So that's why the court is losing trust, because they are going back on the rule of law that they had established over the decades. And so it's no surprise to me.
Well, we do need to move on also to 2024, and we'll see how all of this plays out over the next year or so. But I want to point you to this Quinnipiac poll taken last month of Pennsylvania registered voters. Now, this is a hypothetical matchup between the current president and the former president. And if you take a look at the numbers here, this is a toss-up. You've got former President Trump at 47%, Joe Biden at 46%. Al, I will begin with you. How much does this concern you?
Not really much at all. I think that we are in good position. It's a long way away. President Obama polling in 2011 didn't look so good in 20. Looked bad in 2011, wasn't so bad in 2012 when he won re-election. I think a similar dynamic will play out here. Frankly, I'd love nothing more than for the president to get to run against Donald Trump. He's a flawed candidate. He's already lost before, and his troubles are only getting worse in the courts. So that would be a great matchup on our side, frankly.
But Al, as you know, that the former president's troubles in the court, with every indictment, his popularity has been increasing. Garrett, I'll give you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the Republican primary, I think we would both agree on this, that Donald Trump is completely dominating. He's up 30 points in your Fox News poll that recently came out. And it's not just his popularity in the Republican primary. Voters who think he can beat Joe Biden in the Republican primary, he's up 30 there, and on the policy issues. I would disagree. I think Joe Biden is the weakest incumbent we've ever had. In an NBC poll, even 43% of Democrats are questioning his stamina, his age, those type of things. And you've seen over and over again, 50% of Democrats in Fox News polls and other polls not wanting him to run again. So Joe Biden's got big problems. You can't find a poll over the last 2 years where people approve of his policies, his agenda, or his presidency. And so a state like Pennsylvania, I agree that, we're still 15, 16 months from an election here, but there's a lot of warning signs for Joe Biden and his weakness going into a general election.
I mean, look,
well, let's put up that Fox News poll. I'll give you just a second here. If you just give me just a second, I want to put up that Fox News poll that shows GOP presidential nominees' preference. To Garrett's point, Donald Trump at 56%, the nearest contender, 22%, Ron DeSantis. But before you respond there, Al, Garrett, I do want to point out, we have these indictments that have come for the former president and possibly more on the way. This latest one out of Mar-a-Lago, it's not nothing.
That's right.
Certainly, but I think if you look at here, there's a clear double standard here, right? Joe Biden had documents in his garage from his time as vice president and senator. The Presidential Records Act did not apply to him. He had no declassification authority. I think the key case here is a 2010 case by an Obama-appointed judge, Judge Berman, with the Clinton sock drawer case here. And it was about the Presidential Records Act. President Clinton at the time had 8 years of recordings stored in his drawer. It talked military strategy. It talked national security. That judge ruled that he had the authority to have that. And so you're seeing a double standard here with Joe Biden, with Hillary Clinton, and again, Donald Trump under the Presidential Records Act. That actually applied to him, and we have a standard with Judge Berman, an Obama-appointed judge, who pointed that out.
This is why.
Yeah, go ahead. I only have a few seconds left.
This is why people have no faith in their institutions anymore, because people on the Republican side claim that any prosecution of Trump is somehow inappropriate or inconsistent. We have to go back to let the courts be the courts, let prosecutors be prosecutors, and let the facts take us where they take us. Not every case is the same, and it's not necessarily inconsistent to have some audio tapes versus obstructing justice, which is what happened here.
And I am out of time. Al Mottur, Garrett Ventry, happy 4th to both of you, and thanks for being here today. Have a good one.
Bye.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.